think poetry's greatest powers is its ability to explore a concept, maybe one that we're all really, really familiar with, and to dive deep into it, to subvert it, to allow it to take on entirely new meanings. We think that we're in for one thing, and we end up learning something much, much deeper, much more nuanced, and much more complex. And today we're going to be doing that same thing once more with a poem. This time, this is a piece by the poet at Poelia or Lee. They'll have to let me know how to pronounce their name. They have a poem entitled "There Are No Fathers in This House," and we are going to be exploring it. Hello, guys. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is where you are. My name is Jeff, and today this is Fine Print, which is our weekly show on Sundays where we take a look at a poem that you send us and we analyze it. Our goal is not workshopping, our goal is just seeing what is actually happening inside of the poem so that way we have some ideas of things we can do with our own work. We can take on new understandings of poetry and what it can do, and we can also just have some fun analyzing, diving into poems. Let's take a look at our piece that we're going to be analyzing today. Again, this piece is entitled "There Are No Fathers in This House." You can find this poet with the handle, once more, I'll include it so you guys can find them here. So I do want to thank them for allowing us to take a look at their work. There are no fathers in this house after Maureen P. Medina. In this house, there are no fathers. There are men who have yet to kick the dog. There are men who yet to hit a child. Men who yet to make their family barricade the bedroom door with a chair, with the bed, with their own trembling bodies. There are men who scream in language of, "My father never loved me," meaning "you do what I tell you to," meaning a hand me down called tough love, and my father was worse. It is not love. It is a fist beating down the door, a language passed down through smacks, a throbbing silence, a language wearing a stale, rotting musk, rattling doorknobs, making mommy cry, making her rock back and forth, chanting syllables from the Bible. In this house, ghosts are real, and my father is not my father right now. Thanks again to at Poet Leah for allowing us to take a look at this piece. So one of the things that I want to explore before we kind of just talk about the poem in general is I want to explore this concept of definition and defining and showing how poems can explore definitions, subvert them, change them, and things like that. Matthias is here. Matthias, co-host from our Tuesday stream. Thanks for stopping by. And like I said, one of the reasons I picked this poem for tonight because I really like how the layer, how father, the concept of a father takes on many different layers, and in fact, the poem directly confronts the idea of defining and definition and what a concept can mean as we get to the very end of the poem. So let's begin talking about this. What's up, also to Joshua stopping by? Great to see you as always. All right, so in this poem, in this house, there are no fathers. There are men. So this is our first definition, right? So as we play through this, I just want you to take the concept and think about for your own pieces and concepts you introduce in your own pieces and what are you projecting onto those concepts for your reader to make sense of. Allow me to get my marker really quick. All right. So, there are no fathers, there are men. So already we're creating a contrast. We're creating a separation between fathers and men. So that's kind of the very first act of defining and labeling and concept creation that we get into. Men. And then what do? We take men and then we elaborate on what men are. Men are those who have yet to kick the dog. There are men who yet to hit a child. Men who yet to make their family barricade the bedroom door. So on the one hand, we have this idea of what a father is by negation, what a father does not do. Or actually, I guess it's more about men. Men are negation. Men are what fathers don't do. We have this negative association that we're building around men. I mean, around fathers, a negative association. We're building positive associations with men, and then it's almost doing this formula where when men do these things, when they do kick the dog, when they do hit the child, when they do make the family barricade the bedroom door, that's when things enter into father territory, or so the poem almost seems to suggest in this opening. Um, so some very striking images with their own trembling bodies. Okay. There are men who scream in language of my father never loved me, meaning you do what I tell you to. Just another thing too is that structurally, what this poem is doing. So it's using the slashes in the middle of lines. So one thing that does is it's like line breaks without line breaks, right? It also can affect your rhythm, and so it almost creates like these moments of like inline enjambment. So they're like meaning my father never loved me, meaning you do. My father never loved me, meaning you do. That starts off really endearing, right? And then it gets worse. What I tell you to, you do what I tell you to. Okay. So I like what the use of the structure here. I think it allows for a lot more open interpretations of concepts. So you're constantly kind of being thrown back and forth, and there's more uneasiness, right? Because you never know what's going to happen on the next line. You never know what's going to happen on the next turn or after the next slash. My father was worse. It is not love. So now we have more definitions, right? We even have the word, for instance, meaning. This is a poem that's so interested in giving, in defining. My father never loved me, meaning you do what I tell you to, meaning a hand me down, called something. So now we're creating more associations, this hand me down. This is it just intergenerational tough love. And my father was worse. Another definition, right? My father was worse, was almost acting as an equal sign of sorts. So now the associations are of worse. Is this the first time that the father is also? No, it's not. Um, well, kind of. Isn't it interesting how my father changes? Like there are men who scream in language of my father never loved me. It's like, for instance, this first time that we get the my, this feels like it's like a quote from the men who scream, right? It feels like it's attributed to them. There are men who scream, um, my father never loved me. But then here, this feels much more personal. This feels more like we're now getting to the speaker's relationship with their father. That's what kind of stands out to me in that part right there. My father was worse. It is not love. And now we're going back to defining through negation. It's not love. So on the one hand, it's not something. It is something else. It's a fist beating down the door. A language passed through smacks. This language of violence. Um, I like this contrast between. So here we have mommy versus father, in the level of intimacy used by word choice to characterize people. Father, distance, formality, sternness, more authority in some ways, I feel, versus mommy, which is softer, childish, playful, um, warmer, more intimate, a softer connection, right? Cry, making mama cry, mommy cry, back and forth, chanting syllables from the Bible. In this house, ghosts are real, and my father is not. And what a great enjambment. Ghosts are real, and my father is not. A great enjambment, and then finishing with the next line, my father, um, right now. And that right now, my father is not my father right now. I think, we're often taught, to be careful with adverbs. A lot of times they're not necessary, but I think this right now is doing so much work that just really focused on the temporary aspect. We can't speak about the future and what may change, but for the moment, this is the reality, and I appreciate that. Um, I think right now is doing a lot of work at the end. So, one of the things that I think this poem is doing is that, or I'll put this in contrast with other poems. A lot of times we have to be careful with characters that appear in poems, especially characters that people already have their own associations with, because sometimes we can become very reliant on them. So, for instance, I might say the word mom, and I assume that people are going to apply the same characteristics that I apply to my own mother you know, to that character in the poem. When in reality, people have different relationships with their mom. You might have a good relationship with your mom. You might have a negative relationship with your mom. You might not talk to your mom. You might talk to your mom every day. So just by using the word mom in your poem doesn't necessarily mean, I think a lot of times poets use mom as this character who's, warm and nurturing very often, just to give an example. And they don't do anything else in their poem to demonstrate that warmth or that nurturing aspect. They just assume that by using the word mom, that the reader's going to also have those same notions. When in reality, again, because people have much more complex relationships with for instance, family members, that may not actually come across. So this is why we really need to make sure we're not falling into tropes or falling into cliche, because we may not be doing the work that allows for greater emotional exploration. What is this poem doing? What this poem is doing is it's layering more and more onto the father. And especially it's doing it through scenes of violence and aggression. At times through negation. Again, we see earlier, like, yet to kick the dog. It's implying that this has happened. It's so specific, right? So, why does the speaker even know about this? Well, this is probably because they're pulling, from something that the speaker's experienced. Um, Hitting the child. Um, then we get even more. Make their family, like multiple people, barricade the bedroom door with a chair, with the bed, with their own troubling. Like, it just gets worse and worse, right? With their a chair, the bed, or own trembling bodies. Like, there's a greater sense of desperation. We're really building what the father does or what men don't do. So we're not just saying father and then assuming our reader's going to follow along. No, we're giving the concrete examples, so that way the reader has no doubt about who the father is for the speaker, right? So I just really like that aspect of this poem, how it takes this idea of father and it doesn't just assume or lead the reader to assume certain things. No, it goes into the nitty gritty aspects of what father means to the speaker, and being a father means, and what it doesn't mean. In fact, so much that the father becomes not a father by the end of the poem. So yeah, that's kind of what I want to highlight today. I would encourage you in your own pieces, kind of just exploring your own characters. What are you doing to layer your characters? I think another thing that's happening in a poem, like, this is layering the father by also playing with that, again, that role of negation. So on the one hand we have this, but then on the other hand we have, there are men who have yet to kick the dog, yet to do this. Men who scream in language of my father never loved me, so there's also that. And I think another thing you see too is the impact of the character, not just on the speaker, but on others. So, for instance, you see that down here with making mommy cry. So, you're seeing the impact of the father, not only necessarily on the speaker, but you're also seeing it on the mom. But it's also somewhat projected too, right? Because it's the speaker seeing the mom engage, like have this interaction and go through this moment. So we're always through the lens of the speaker, and we're always seeing what the speaker is paying attention to, or what's the speaker noticing? Does the speaker is noticing the mom crying because of the father, noticing also like the sound, noticing also the Bible. Bible's one of the few words here getting capitalized, so there's so much reverence put on that, and that ties in the whole other thing. So you have a religious family. The Bible, there isn't much other, in a sense, not a whole lot of other religion that I identify going on until you get to this moment. And then, I mean, the Bible's rich with references, to the Father, to God, so suddenly tying in that, there's almost this irony of sorts between the father, another father figure, right? In terms of God, and then like for instance, even in in terms of your testament, like your Old Testament, your vengeful, strong, powerful act God versus your other God in the New Testament, who's showing more compassion and things like that. So adding the Bible into that just further pushes a lot of the different parallels of fatherhood that appear in the poem. And so I really like that very late addition of the Bible in the poem, because I think that just kind of furthers things even more. In this house goes so real, my father is not my father right now. Yeah, this is a really good last line. All right, I would love to know your guys' thoughts too on in terms of just character development, things you've seen, things that you think you can incorporate into your own pieces, or considerations that you think are important to have with regards to adding complexity and adding layers and adding nuance to. It doesn't even have to be characters. It could be the just concepts or ideas or any other structures that appear in your poem to make them become much more complicated than they initially are when you first hear them said. All right, so that's just our quick analysis. I want to thank again at Poet Lee for allowing us to look at this poem. It was a joy to look at. I think you're doing great things with the concepts here. We'll be back next Sunday with another edition of Fine Print. I also just want to let you know that for those of you who are interested in a poetry retreat experience, our poetry retreat is happening. In fact, April 5th through the 7th, so that whole weekend. We are holding a poetry retreat where poets are going to be able to write 3 poems, edit 2 poems, do some little excursions around town, and also there will be an open mic, and we'll also be engaging in reading analysis. So if you're interested in joining us for a 3-day poetry experience in Columbus, Ohio, you can go to diversuspoetry.com/retreat and take part in our experience. We'd love to work with you, help you grow in poetry. It's one of the few urban retreats in the country. All the other retreats want to send you somewhere out in the country, in these like random middle of nowhere places. No, we're an urban retreat. 3 days. Cost currently is $125 to attend. You need to pre-register. One part of the reason we're telling you this is because the pre-registration ends today at 11:59 p.m. So you have like 2.5 hours ish to get things started. It's our fourth retreat, and we're really excited to be able to work with you for 3 days. All right. Josh was saying it's a good poem. I agree. Lots of things to like there. Thank you guys so much for spending some time with us. We'll be back on Tuesday. Me and Matthias. Matthias was here a little bit earlier to talk about some poetry topics. So be sure to check us out on Tuesday. We're around 9:30, 9:45 p.m. New York. Thank you guys so much for your time. We will see you later. Have a good day. Have a good night. Have a good afternoon. Take care, guys. Bye. Yes, that is a great price. Joshua, yes. Seriously. For what you're going to be getting for the 3 days, you're not going to find any retreat experience like that. I'll be honest. All right. Anyways, I'll see you guys later. Have a good day. Have a good night. Have a good afternoon.